Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being on time. We will now proceed with the third session. A quick reminder, please silence your phones. The speakers for this session are Mr. Jiwan Acharya and Dr. Nitya Nanda. The discussant is Mr. Sandeep Chamling Rai, and the session will be chaired by Dr. Liu Yang, Senior Research Fellow at the Energy Studies Institute. Dr. Yang?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for coming back. In this session, we'll move our topic to climate change. So, as you know, energy sector is closely associated with climate challenges. And now, Southeast Asia and South Asia play an increasingly important role in the changing climate landscape. So some studies conducted by the International Energy Agency showed already that by 2030 the global energy demand growth will be increased by 1/3. And 96% of this growth will come from China, India, Southeast Asia, and especially by 2030, and China will reach the plateau for energy demand growth, and India and Southeast Asian countries will take over the role of China to lead the global energy demand growth. So clearly, India and other South Asian countries will contribute significantly to the future greenhouse gas emissions. So the current energy transitions certainly will help address climate change at global level. So as you are aware, so climate is a global good. So, which will, have global externalities on the whole of humankind. So, every action that we take now in each country will have the global impact. So, in this session, we have three speakers. So, two main speakers, Mr. Jiwan Acharya from Asian Development Bank, and also Dr. Nitya Nanda from the Energy and Resources Institute of India, and we have also Discussant from WWF. And so these three distinguished speakers will share their insights on the impact of regional cooperation to address climate change. And they have handful experience on the ground. So as you can see from their short view, Dr. Acharya is a senior climate change specialist in the ADB, and he is a part of ADB's climate change and clean energy team, and is responsible for overseeing ADB's several key initiatives, including Energy for All, low carbon technology transfer, technological support facility under the carbon market program. So I'm convinced that Dr. Acharya will share many insights on what is happening in South Asia countries in terms of climate change and mitigation adaptation project. So now I'd just like to give floor to Mr. Jiwan Acharya. So I ask you to join me welcoming him to open the floor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to EDB to this important event. When I came here in the morning, so when I looked at my agenda, I saw that my talk is after lunch. So then I was very happy that in the morning I'll be able to listen to all the good speakers so that I'll be able to feel I can prepare myself better. But then now I realize that after lunch session is usually very, very challenging. There are in two ways. One is after having a good lunch is usually people have difficulty in concentrating. That's why it has to, whatever I say would have to be very interesting to you. The second thing is all the things that I had planned, that I was thinking of sharing with you, has already been shared so well in the morning sessions. So now I'm in a dilemma in terms of what exactly should I say, so that will be useful for you and interesting for you as well. Regardless, again, thank you for the invitation and for the good introduction. I just recently moved to our office in India, where I'm mostly involved in preparing our loans, policy dialogues with the governments, and implementation of projects. So I thought that maybe that role, my experience in dealing with these countries, and whatever I have heard, learned, experienced, would be able to give you a little bit of a different perspective in terms of what exactly that we see in the region in addressing their climate change related issues and aspects, but more importantly, government's efforts toward this low carbon economy. So I thought that maybe from that perspective, I will share some of my thoughts also. And also wanted to share some of the initiative that EDB is doing, some of the investment that we are making, some of the projects that we are doing. So I thought that probably that will add some value in our discussion today. A lot has already been said in this, in where the energy sector in South Asia is moving, but the key directions that we take it, which is very consistent with what we have heard earlier in the morning, is that Asia overall, and then South Asia, Southeast Asia, and this kind including China, are the one who are dominating this energy supply, generation, demand as well. So this is very important, region. People also say that to win or lose climate change, whatever happens in Asia will determine. So this is a very important region from that point of view. Again, some of the CO2 emissions and so on. But at the same time, a large number of people without access to energy also. So being a development bank, so what also important for us is to see that while addressing this climate change, we also need to make sure that the people will have access to energy, among other things. Again, a lot has already been shared on this one, but this is also important for us that some of these countries, in terms of how much is their megawatt installed capacity, how much is peak deficit, and so on. Here I do want to make one point, is that from the division where I work, which is South Asia, and the definition of South Asia for us is that the Pakistan and Afghanistan countries are looked after by another department. That's why I will not be focusing on those two countries. It's not for any other reasons, but just because I don't belong to that particular region within ADB, so I'll be focusing on these countries. But having said that, Myanmar is also joined this South Asia Sub-Regional Economic Cooperation, where ADB is assisting these countries in dealing with various energy sector activities as well. So as you can see that the big deficit, especially in a country like Nepal, is very big. We discussed that earlier. Again, Bangladesh is also very high, and so on. But so these kind of things is very important for us. When you go and talk to these countries, the request that they tell us is that, look, we are not meeting our own demand. That's why please help us finance some more energy generation projects also, or on the transmission line projects as well. So this is one consideration that we need to tech, especially from the energy security point of view. Again, a lot has also been discussed earlier. This country-wise energy mix is also very important. Looking at various countries and how much of they are using for hydropower, other renewables, gas, coal, and so on. So these are also the things which are also important for us when we're making an investment decision in all of these countries to see which are the technologies, what kind of fuel-based that we should be supporting in these efforts. Mind you, what happens is that when we talk to these countries, sometimes when we get requests to finance another coal projects also, sometimes we reach also to get in kind of dilemma is in terms of receiving a request to finance energy efficiency projects in the very old coal-fired projects. What do you do? How do you handle such situations as well? What is important is looking at their energy situations, looking at their various options as well, and then looking at what kind of priorities do they have, and then see which is important technology or stream that these countries want to do, and then that we need to focus on. Again, a lot has already been said about this number of people who have access to electricity, and we also do look at not only electricity but also people dependent on biomass or some traditional use for cooking and heating as well. Heating probably not so much, except in some parts of Nepal and Bhutan, but mostly in the firewood for cooking and so on, and its impact on women and children. These are also very important consideration for us. Again, a lot has also been said in the Energy and Paris Agreement. ADB is not a party to UNFCCC process, but we work as an observer there. But it's also a very important effort that globally all the countries are participating. So it's also important for us to see what kind of commitments are made, and then what are being achieved, and then in terms of when we are finalizing our programs for these countries, what kind of support shall we provide, and then from our management also is important to show how ADB's efforts are aligned to those countries meeting their NDCs or any other climate change related targets also. So whenever we make an investment decision, we always try to align that this will actually be contributing to those efforts also. We are also looking at various countries. Some of these are not necessarily in South Asia, but some of these targets of 100% 100% renewables targets, 30%, 20 to 30%. These are some of these countries that we are also assisting them in preparing their plan and policies and targets and some kind of a roadmaps of how these countries will be able to achieve these renewable energy targets. As I was mentioning earlier, of course, we would like very much to see these countries going towards 100% of renewables, but how much is that really possible in any particular country, looking at their absorption capacity, how much the grid can handle, those kind of things are important. And then this is where technologies like whether it's energy storage and others becomes a very, very important aspect of it. And then we are not a technology developer as such, but we do keep track of how these different technologies are emerging, and then how can we help promote those advanced technologies in these countries also. Some of these things that we wanted to highlight is this leapfrogging development, and some of these technologies are also very important. We thought that maybe that's one way we can add value in terms of their developments. And then this is a very typical example of people using incandescent lamps, fluorescent lamps in the past. And then, in fact, ADB has also financed some projects in promoting of CFL, but now CFL is no longer, because of these LEDs, there is a lot already happening. So either leapfrogging technologies, those who are using incandescent directly towards LEDs, or even those who even don't have any electricity, they will directly use LEDs. So I think that's probably one good way of leapfrogging some of these technologies as well. So here this illustrates very well in terms of how fast these technologies are developing, and then it's very important to keep track of those, and then when we are making some investment decisions in a particular country, to see and pick that kind of technology which will actually have the potential to be scaled up very quickly or is coming very quickly, and then from our side we can assist in bringing that a little bit earlier in terms of the scaling it up in terms of decision-making as well. And this is one example that we have in several countries also. Again, talking about, we always use this example of these mobile phones. For a country like India, I think about 1 billion more people have mobile connections. But the Philippines, if you see that landline counts is going down, and then more people are using mobile phones and so on. Afghanistan, as you can see, had only 110,000 landlines and close to 2 million mobile phones. So this also shows one development in terms of how these infrastructures are also developing. And then the reason why I wanted to put this slide here is also for all of us to think about this decentralized energy generation. It's also coming up very fast. So of course, telecommunication and the power sectors are two different things. Maybe we may not be able to compare it that well. But also to keep in mind that nowadays in some of these countries in Africa, even in countries like Afghanistan, they really don't need these telecommunication landlines. They can move directly from nothing towards mobile phones immediately. So they really don't need that infrastructure for the wired telephone. So similar nature, especially in the rural areas or even in the urban areas, people will move towards the decentralized energy generation. They will generate their own energy. So whatever we see in our transmission line and also in the distribution probably is not needed, or maybe needed be limited to only to larger industrial and commercial areas. This I'm talking, it will not happen immediately, but of course it will happen in 15, 20 years down the road. But what I see is that this is the direction that is going on. So investing more in the transmission line is how much shall we invest right now? Because immediately after some time of these transmission line companies will have these huge assets, and if it is not being used properly, we'll have a difficulty there. Similarly also with the distribution line. But again, this is too early, but at the same time it's important to keep in mind how things are developing. From a little bit also on the ADB side, in terms of addressing climate change, from the energy side, we have this energy policy, and then we have these three main pillars of renewable energy and energy efficiency, promotion, maximizing access to energy, and then policy reforms and so on. So these are the three pillars in our energy policy that we follow in whatever activities that we do. And then as you can see that these are all we track very closely in terms of how are we doing every year in promoting renewable energy and energy efficiency, in the energy access, and also in the reforms also. So a lot of capacity building related activities also take place there. And the other thing what is also important is looking at this deployment of new and advanced technology. As I said earlier, is even though we are not in the business of developing technologies, but we see our value addition could be in bringing those advanced technologies to these countries. As you also know very well, that there's, unlike before, nowadays there are so many people so many organizations offering funds to many of these countries. We have, of course, ADB, World Bank, and some bilaterals. We also have the AIIB, and others are also offering similar support also. If you look at the total funding requirements, and whatever we are providing is very little, but having said that, people also, now our clients also ask in terms of what's the real value that institution like ADB is bringing to support these countries and so on. So it's also important for us to be innovative, and then when you talk to our clients, since they have more options right now, what value that we are bringing in on the table. So this is where advanced technologies and so on is very important also, rather than just bringing in just money. Of course, these are some of the targets that we have: 100% electricity access by 2025 to 2030, and then $3 billion per year in the climate mitigation alone. and then remaining 2 to 3 billion also for the adaptations also. So as you can see that we have these actual numbers in terms of our targets, and then we track and then report where we are contributing. Again, a little bit also on the climate change side in the Paris Agreement. Out of 40 countries, 38 have already committed to this agreement, and then we are also supporting them in terms of how well they are doing in terms of implementing the indices also, as I said earlier. Again, poverty becomes an important issue for us, so that while addressing this climate change, how can we also improve improve their economic activities, and how energy can contribute in addressing that poverty issue is also very important. So this is what I was saying earlier, that we have this target of 6 billion adaptation, mitigation, and also in the sustainable transport and others also. And then we have also some examples in China, Uzbekistan, and Bangladesh and Nepal in terms of looking at various technologies. Again, we see this as a more like a leapfrogging technologies, rather investing in the new transmission lines and so on, to see if there's anything on even the transmission lines, and also in some digitizations and so on. So there's also very important aspects of it. Again, we are also looking at some kind of a diesel, solar, hybrid mini grids also, energy storage in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, also looking at how bird movements can affect the wind power projects, or in other words, how can we ensure that bird movements will not be affected because of the wind power projects also. So we are also looking at those kind of things, also the floating solar PV systems also. Storage and numerous initiative in energy access projects also, looking at rooftops, micro mini grid systems in Philippines, Nepal, some of these Pacific island countries, some of the energy storage technologies also. And then this is one project earlier, Karthik also mentioned about these LEDs in India. So this Energy Efficiency Services Limited, ESL, is also promoting this Super ESCO model. And in fact, we have given them $200 million to promote these more efficient demand-side energy efficiency technology as well. So we see these kind of modalities would actually help to promote these demand-side energy efficiency technologies in the country. And then Karthik already mentioned that looking at how can, if we aggregate a lot of demand and then do a procurement for larger scale, how the cost goes down, and then how you can also reduce the cost and also control the quality. So this is a very good example. And of course, as you can see, there's also dashboards for Ujala, for LED bulbs, also for street light, for pumps, and so on. So this is one example of how ADB is also assisting some of these countries and promoting advanced technologies also. And some of their information are also in their website. Little bit also on this cross-border, some kind of regional cooperation activities. As I was mentioning earlier, ADB also works to assist this South Asia SHOP regional economic cooperation, and then for the energy part, we support that working group. And then, as you can see, some of these countries, they have their own strength, whether they may have access to renewable energy in certain parts of the year, and then maybe there's another country could be in deficit in those months. So I think how can we bring them together? So the message that I wanted to bring it here is that these countries do realize that there are a lot of opportunities and needs as well, but they do have those kind of differences and challenges, and then institution like ADB can also help facilitate that process, being kind of independent and also honest brokering in many ways in bringing all these countries together and taking forward. So as you can see, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Maldives, Bangladesh, and Bhutan, just an example of how these countries can come together and then share their difficulties and challenges, but at the same time identifying opportunities where they can work together. I think in us providing that kind of a platform for all of these countries coming together alone has helped a lot. Of course, the speed at which we would like to see are not there, but at the same time, we do need to recognize that these are all sovereign countries and they do have their own positions in certain aspects of it. They have their own priorities, their own constraints also. So none of these countries we can just ignore. So I think bringing them together and dealing with those things is a very, very time-consuming effort. But I think a lot of good progress has actually happened in that area. So I thought that I would just share that with you also on that one. I think I already talked about this ADB financing earlier. I also mentioned that ADB, what we also do is to not only use our own financing, but we also try to leverage financing from other sources. I think you heard about this Green Climate Fund of 10 billion and so on. Being an accredited agency, we also try to tap that resources and then bring it to our countries. So what we do is that oftentimes we blend our money, even though which is already very concessional, but we also try to bring that one with other concessional funds and then make it much more concessional to this country, so that many of these things can happen at a more rapid pace. We also have some grant financing as well. We call it Asia Clean Energy Financing Partnership Facility. In various donor countries have put in money there, and then we help bring that grant resources together with our loan and also some other resources, so that many of these things can happen. I think we do need to appreciate that the capacity of many of these countries is not there, or maybe at the central level there is, but when you go to the state level or in the district and provinces level, that capacity is not there. So how do you all assist them in identifying their priorities, implementing of projects, and so on? It requires a lot of efforts. So I think it's very important to keep that in mind. I think I mentioned about this already, about some of these numbers in terms of how much of money that we have and these investments, and also some of these outcomes that we have. The reason why I'm putting this information here, especially the numbers, is just to show that that we do keep track of how much money we have, how much money was given, what has been the results on the ground. It's not just saying that we have this facility and then not knowing what has been the impact of that one. I'd like to especially mention about this high-level technology fund, which may be also very interesting here from this our discussion, is that there is always this perception that advanced technologies, of course, they're more expensive. So that if you go to a country and if they have to borrow money, then why would they go for advanced technology? They would rather go for technologies that they feel very comfortable with or is available in the market and so on. So in order to address climate change, I think we need to bring in these advanced technologies at a much quicker, faster pace. And then, but on the other hand, if you go and talk to the countries and they say that why would I buy more expensive technology, even though maybe it's better, but maybe there are risks associated with these technologies, or we don't know the experience and so on. That's why we have set up this high-level technology fund. The government of Japan has given us $40 million at the beginning, but we are talking with other donors as well to see that kind of a grant resources, if it can be coupled with our other resources, then lower down the risk for these countries and we can promote that one. So that's also one other way of addressing some of these climate change related technology. Also, there are some of the technologies which we define as high level technology, and we also have the Japan Fund for Joint Credit Mechanism also. Again, there are some of the numbers in terms of many of you are familiar with ADB, but just to show that in 2016, total assistance that we provided was about $31 billion, and 17.5 billion was from ADB, and then about 14 plus billion was from this other co-financing that we have mobilized. So it's basically $30 plus billion investment that we do in the Asia Pacific region. least some kind of a, in terms of how much has been the sovereign and also from the non-sovereign, especially from the private sector side, and the grant money there. And then this again, looking at our climate change, clean energy investment, as I mentioned, that we do track that one. Challenges, I think some of these is very important to keep in mind that people have this resistance for any change. So on one hand, they have to change, but there's always this resistance to change. So how do you handle that one? And for an institution like ADB, how can we provide that support for this cost of technologies, perceived risk, awareness, and so on. So these are the technologies, these are the risks that we see in many of these countries are facing. So it's very important that we work together with other our development partners and the academic institutions, civil society organizations, local financial institutions, and many other partners to address some of these things. ADB alone will not be able to provide that all of this support. Again, some of these things are mentioned with the capacity building, awareness, and some of the pilot projects are also very helpful to address some of these challenges as well. So again, this is my final slide. The key message that I wanted to convey here is that Asia, South Asia, in this context, is a very, very dynamic region. A lot of things are happening, but at the same time, a lot has to happen. So this is an opportunity for us if we have to change anything, if we have to influence anything, if we have to support anything. So this is the kind of a very, very high time. Losing this opportunity may force these countries get locked into some of these technologies that we wanted them not to use it, let's say, for instance. So this is where I think all of us needs to be work together to assist that countries by providing information, getting them involved in selecting these technologies, and also providing some necessary financing so that they can use it in making the right decisions. Failure to do so may get them locked in the technologies for the next 20 or 30 years, so we may be missing that opportunity. So from ADB side, and of course, we provide a financing of about $6 billion a year in all of these things, would be significant, but may not be enough for any of these countries also. So that's why bringing in mobilizing other financing is very, very important there. Here, introducing of new technologies is very, very important. As I said earlier, just providing a financing alone is not enough. Providing new technologies is also very important, especially if you have to address these climate change issues also. And also, we never forget about the soft aspect of it, whether it's capacity building or awareness and so on. If we fail to do that one, I think other two things will not move that fast. So all of these three things need to move together so that we'll be able to achieve what these countries are and need it. So this is my contact information, email, and so on. Again, very happy to take some more questions and participate in further discussion. I basically touched upon how we see the region, especially South Asia, is moving. I also mention about these climate change related aspects in terms of these countries, the situation of energy, and then the role of technology, and what ADB is doing, both in terms of financing and also providing other support, which are also important to address that one. I hope that will give you a little bit of perspective, even though I tried to touch upon various aspects of it, but I thought that it's important that to give you some kind of a flavor of where we are coming, what we do, and all of your suggestions, feedback, and support will always be appreciated. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Acharya, for this presentation. That gives us a good overview on a range of activities undertaken by the ADB. So what impressed me mostly is the extent to which ADB insists on the importance of technology. So you have these countries realize leapfrogging opportunities to evolve, following the pathway as conducted by the other countries already. And so you bring much value added by bringing new and advanced technologies. And also, I see ADB has invested a huge money in the energy sector, while serving also as a catalyzer to mobilize climate finance from other sovereign and international resources. So I think it's a good input for our discussion and Q&A session, and we'll keep the questions to the final discussion stage. And now let's move on to Dr. Nitya Nanda. So Dr. Nitya is a fellow with the Energy and Resource Institute of India, and he has a great deal of experience in research, consulting, and teaching in the fields of international trade, investment, environment, and development issues. And currently, he is leading the Center for Resource Efficiency and Governance at TERI, and he is also the editor of TERI's flagship journal, which is Journal of Resources, Energy, and Development. So now, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for my bad throat. And also thanks to the organizer for giving me this opportunity and present my views to this gathering. I'll briefly talk about what has been happening or rather not happening in SARC as a climate change centric agenda that could have been taken. SARC agenda has got climate change for quite a long time. First time it happened in 14th SARC summit, which happened in April 2007, where countries agreed for pursuing a climate resilient development in South Asia. That's where we started. And again next year it was more or less reiterated, the same commitment. And in the next year itself, it was under the leadership of Bangladesh. Regional action for climate change was formulated, and which also adopted an agenda, covering many areas of climate change, adaptation to climate change, policy and actions for climate change mitigation, technology transfer, finance investment. So all kind of issues that people talk about were adopted as part of what SARC could do, SARC members could do in the regional framework. But in April 2010, when the SARC members met in Bhutan, it was realized that it was all talk shop and nothing really happened. So it was thought that creating some institutional mechanism would help, otherwise you could be talking. And it was created, but unfortunately even that did not produce any outcome. And if you look at other aspects that in climate change negotiation under the WWF, these countries, though they're part of the same developing country G77 group, within these countries there was significant difference of opinion. It was again India versus others kind of situation. And the members like Maldives and Bangladesh, who thought they were going to be the worst victims of climate change, they somehow thought that India was not taking the issue seriously. And it was of course probably a reflection of the global world view, the Western world's view that India was not doing enough. And it was actually becoming a stumbling block to get climate change agreement going in the global forum. But Paris Agreement changed that perspective at least, because India was found to take a very bold approach in Paris, and the commitments that India made were considered to be very strong, and people are not complaining about India not being kind of serious about climate change. Now, at a broader level, if you look at the climate change is going to impact South Asian countries from two different perspectives. One is that because of the mitigation commitment that all countries have made, there are varying commitments, of course. This mitigating climate change commitments would not be easy for them. So a lot of actions would be required. Second thing is that even if the global community has adopted Paris Agreement, it is well known that it is not going to be enough, whatever countries are doing. So climate change is a reality, and given that these countries also need to consider serious adaptation measures, adaptation mechanisms that they are going to take. So my case is whether South Asian countries can produce better outcomes in both these two dimensions of climate change action if they come together and if they come to a regional cooperation framework. Now,
Can you change mic? I think that might be running out.
Hello? It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so before I get into that,
I think let's change the mic for him.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So before I get into what cooperation can bring, let us just briefly look at what is the kind of commitments, mitigation commitment that these countries have made. If you look at Afghanistan, it said that 13.6% by 2030 compared to business as usual scenario, but it was entirely conditional on external support. Pakistan is another country whose commitment is entirely conditional upon getting external support in terms of finance and other issues, other technology and other things. Now, Pakistan also says it can do that, to the extent of 20% of its 2030 projected GHG emission, but abatement cost would be somewhere around $40 billion. So it depends on getting that much of money. Bangladesh has two kinds of commitment. One, 5% 2030 BAU, that is unconditionally. This will happen even if Bangladesh is not going to get much from outside. But Bangladesh says if it gets adequate external support, its reduction can go up to 15%. Though one can keep in mind that Bangladesh its own emission right now is pretty small. So to that extent, reducing emission would be even more difficult. Sri Lanka says 7% unconditionally and 23% conditional. Maldives 10% without assistance, 24% with assistance. Nepal says it did not get into that debate of how much wind and everything, but it says 40% fossil fuels consumption, 4,000 megawatt of hydel power generation by 2020, and 12,000 megawatt of hydel power generation by 2030, and more importantly, 2,100 megawatt of solar by 2030. And it also says every household in rural areas to get smokeless improved cooking stoves by 2030. I think that's where they tried to make climate change and energy access balance. India's commitment is like this: 33 to 35% by 2030 from 2005 level, and it says additional carbon sink in terms of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. This would be through afforestation and other such measures, and 175 gigawatt of renewable power and 1,000 gigawatt, 100 of them from solar alone. But it also said share of non-fossil fuel from 30 to 40%. You know, though let me remind that 30% is almost done in India. If you consider hydropower and other renewables, it is about 28% like that. So it's not going to be a big deal for that, but 40% is going to be quite a good achievement. Now let's look at where we are coming from and why countries have adopted kind of energy mix that they did. If you look at energy resources and potential in South Asia, you will see India has almost nothing except coal in terms of fossil fuels. Bangladesh has got natural gas. Even Pakistan has got natural gas. India, of course, also has natural gas, but compared towards its huge population and other needs, it's quite minimal. India also has got hydropower generation capability, which is also reasonably high compared to other countries in South Asia. But harnessing that is not going to be easy. Now, all countries also have solar and wind power, and in that, India has quite high capability there, and that's why India could talk of getting that much of solar and hydro. For other countries, some countries I did not see the proper assessment, so those are not zero, but those are plans. But this is where we come from. So the reason that India went for coal-based energy mix is largely because this is where India found additional fuel it had. Now changing that is not going to be easy. I'm focusing a bit more on India because if you take care of India's emission, you will be taking care of more than 80% of emission of South Asia. So that's why it is more important. Now, if you look at the current electricity installed capacity, hydro has got about 13 point something, and MNRE figure is 30 is already achieved. So I was old figure. So 30% is already achieved in terms of if you say installed capacity, but installed capacity is not generated capacity. So generated capacity would be much less. But anyway, given that this mix you have got and how you change it to a different mix where you have renewable as more important in your energy mix. Now, let's look at what is the likely scenario in 5 years from now in India. Now, peak power demand could be somewhere in the range of 250 gigawatt, and total capacity, installed capacity is likely to be 500 gigawatt. But what is important to note here is that out of these 500 gigawatt, 160 is likely to be renewable energy. Much of it will be solar and wind power. But the problem with this like this, once solar power is installed, the operational cost of solar power is nearly zero. So there will be pressure if there is adequate market pressure. These companies can make solar power available at a very, very low cost. Now this low cost power will come only during daytime, and 12 to 3 or 4 would be the maximum output you can get that time. Now contrast that with when is the peak demand that occurs in India. Now, as I was saying in the commenting in the earlier session, the industrial growth has not been good enough in the last few years. So what is driving energy demand in India is more in the residential sector, and that's why you get peak power demand middle of the night at 11 o'clock, where when everybody is putting on the ACs. Indians are quite cost sensitive, so ACs might not be running during daytime, but when they go to bed, they will put on the ACs. So when all the ACs are put on in our houses, you get the peak demand there. Now, how will you match this situation that your generation is happening, peak of that is happening in daytime, afternoon, but peak demand is occurring at 11 p.m. at midnight. Now, imagine what India has been talking about in the last few months, though I think that's a bit too much ambitious, it is unlikely to happen. But some people say that by 2030, all our vehicles on roads should be e-vehicles, which I think is absurd kind of thing to imagine. But nevertheless, even if we achieve 20% of what is being proposed, you would have another problem. You would expect that these cars will run during daytime and these cars will be charged at night. So that will make your peak becomes even higher. So then how will you match that situation? I'm saying this because our base load, what we are calling base load now, that base concept has to change because there will be nothing called base load. But that is coming from coal. And coal-based power plants are not flexible in the sense that you cannot switch on, switch off, right? Even if the most flexible coal plants would not be able to reduce, production at, less than 30% of what is generated. So even that is in a few plants that is possible. The issue is that if coal-based power plants have to run, they have to run all the time. They cannot be shut down during daytime and switch on at night. So you can't do that. Because these plants are not designed for that. And if you do that forcibly, it has huge risk. Huge risk. Your plant life will come down. More importantly, some boilers can go burst up and have all kind of problems. And you know what will happen to that. So that is going to be the biggest challenge for India until we take care of the storage problem. We have been claiming that the coal is, the solar is competitive with coal. Well, that is only because you are talking without storage. So if you are talking about storage, there is no comparison. So if you have to make those flexible, you might have to go for new plants, which can. But at the same time, that the supercritical technology that we are using now, or proposed to use in most of our future plants, there the flexibility is even less. So how do you get into that is a kind of serious challenge. So we are in a situation when you have enormous shortage in daytime and enormous deficit in night time if you are not running the coal plants. Now, how regional cooperation can help? Because in some countries, say in Nepal for example, peak doesn't happen at night. Their peak happens in daytime only. This can have, vary from country to country. I mean, some 20 years back in India, the industrial plants were told that use more energy at night and I will give you a cheaper price. So we were in that situation 20 years back. And now we are saying use more power in daytime. So I don't know how country will move, but so daytime power will be very, very cheap. So once solar powers are coming full steam, and the solar power producers are saying, I am going to, give you power at lowest possible cost, say maybe less than 2 Indian rupees, or even 1 Indian rupees, then of course the coal producers will say, okay, I will give you power competitive at solar, maybe 1 rupee at daytime, but I will charge 8 rupees, 10 rupees at night time. That's the likely scenario, and only that kind of pricing system can handle the situation. Now, if that happens, then possibly the neighboring countries might find it useful to buy Indian power in daytime, which is absolutely cheap. And like countries like Bangladesh have flexible power system because it's largely gas-based. So if they think that okay, take Indian power daytime, which is very cheap, and use our gas, which is also becoming a bit scarce in Bangladesh now because gas shortage is a real problem now. So we can use that in night. So you have that flexibility that can be used. So And if you look at Pakistan, which is suffering from huge shortage, but last 5 years the two countries have been not talking. Currently there is no talk going on. But some 3-4 years back there was discussion about Pakistan buying electricity from India. So I'm not very optimistic on that front, but if that happens, if Pakistan buys electricity from India, then you have another front you are opening, then that will help India. Now, why I am saying this is how neighboring countries can get cheaper power from India, though it is coal-based, but how that is good for the climate, because that will help India to jack up its renewable capability. So if that doesn't happen, to that extent, for India, installing further renewable power would be extremely difficult. So this will, create a situation where neighboring countries might buy coal-based power, which is considered to be dirty, but that will be dirt cheap price. At the same time, this will help India to utilize the renewable power. Now, this has other kind of issues. In fact, coal has got local pollution also. So some countries might find it, easy to handle, because Bangladesh is now facing problem in Rampur thermal power plant, where the protest within country is that it is polluting power plant. We don't want it. Now, few months back, Bangladesh and Adani Power has signed an MOU where Adani will produce power in Jharkhand, in India. So Jharkhand will get at least local pollution. Global pollution is something different, but local pollution will occur in Jharkhand, both coal mining and coal burning. But when power goes to Bangladesh, it is absolutely clean for them, because power doesn't carry emission with it. So it will help some countries who might find it useful, attractive proposition to buy power, which might be as cheap as 1 rupee, 1.5 rupees in the next 2 years of coal-based power, but that will help India. So even if coal, and that will happen even without India installing power further capabilities. It can be done with the existing capability itself. And next issue is, of course, about hydropower within India and Nepal and Bhutan. But there also you need cooperation. As you know, India and Bhutan has a long time cooperation on that. Nepal could not, do much in terms of hydropower, largely because of its local politics. Some people say that the environmental groups are active. But I also hear that the government is trying to promote those hydropower plants. The costs are going to be too high, so the local people say, is it because the Nepali politicians are taking bribe, because of that the price is so high? So I don't know the details, but it is going to be very difficult for Nepal. And as of today, Nepal gets more than 50% of its power demand is being made from Indian power, which is of course coal-based. India is developing a number of power plants in what we call India's northeast, but evacuating that power from that region to rest of India is not going to be easy. So two options: one, Bangladesh can get part of that power, and also Bangladesh can help India evacuate that power from northeast through Bangladesh to rest of India. So that would be one option. For example, though much of power that is going to Bangladesh from India is coal-based, but Bangladesh is also getting gas-based power from the eastern frontier, sending 100,000 megawatt of power from 100 megawatt of power from Tripura, which is gas-based. So that is one aspect. Second thing is about, can we get something called regional grid in terms of natural gas? This is what we have been talking about, and the earliest proposal that came about what we called Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline, and that was actually proposed by Delhi, where I worked, in 1989, and nothing happened so far. Political reason, price, what kind of issues are talked about. Turkey was Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline was considered in a few years later from them. But it is now taking up steam and it is proposed to be completed by 2019, but I am not very optimistic that it can happen at that time. Another is a kind of what I call missed opportunity was Myanmar, Bangladesh, India. Again, it was due to rather bilateral differences between Bangladesh and India. And I say both sides did not anticipate what is going to happen in the future. So Bangladesh probably did not anticipate it will have gas shortage then. And India also made very rigid in terms of not talking what we call lateral issues. When Bangladesh said we will discuss this along with other issues, trade and other issues, which India was not keen at that point of time, but as of now India has agreed, but then the opportunity has been lost.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Nand. Can you quickly finish in the next 2 minutes? Then we can keep more of the discussion.
Okay.
We can
So
talk about
Pakistan wanted to go ahead with IP, but the financial thing that this is not going to be very profitable venture. So my proposal is that if we bring more stakeholders, it's not like IPI. If Nepal, Bhutan, if Bangladesh, all of them come together and you talk about a regional grid and that getting power from all possible sources, these bilateral political differences can be overcome through that. And this will help Nepal, Bhutan, reduce their oil consumption and replace with gas. Other issues is like black carbon, which is a major problem in more of Pakistan and northwest India. Though there are it is prevalent in other parts of the region, but those where you have there you can cooperate. BBIN, as I said, it is not a replacement for the regional approach, which of course would be the best outcome. But if that is not happening, probably that can be a precursor. If you move ahead with whoever is willing, and then others can join. And through this, we can also possibly engage with Southeast Asia.
Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, so countries have made some assessment of climate change cost, which are of course incomplete because adaptation cost is difficult to estimate. But a few areas that I thought would be useful one is water resources. Particularly if you find Pakistan and northwest India, they are the most water stressed region in part of the region. So you cannot solve problem in one country. Agriculture, food security is another area where joint initiatives can help. Disaster management and taking care of health impacts could be other possible areas of adaptation cooperation. So finally, I think there are three important reasons that one is that adaptation is the isolated approach will not help. You need regional approach. Energy cooperation, combined emission can be reduced if you come together. So renewable energy potential should be harnessed better manner. And then many of those problems in the region, due to their similar agroclimatic conditions, they will need similar technology solutions. So that is the third area that will be useful for cooperation. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Nand. You gave us an understanding about key challenges facing South Asia to address climate change. And I see, especially despite tremendous efforts of India to develop solar and wind energy, the countries do have difficulty meeting peak demand because of the intermittency of renewable energies. So that's why international cooperation is required to make most of hydro resources in neighboring countries, and also demand-side management and storage technologies are quite valuable to increase flexibility of the power sector in the India context as well. And we understand also, international cooperation and regional cooperation is quite important from perspective of technology transfer in terms of climate mitigation adaptation, and also from perspective of regional natural gas pipeline. So thank you for sharing insights with us. Now let's move on to our discussant, Mr. Sandeep Chamling Rai. So he is Senior Advisor, Global Climate Adaptation Policy from WWF based in Singapore. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you, ESI, for inviting me. And Dr. Yang has already summarized the discussion. Let me bring my perspective, because basically my work covers the international policy work for the WWF, and basically my area of focus is on climate adaptation and loss and damage in the UN ecosystem process. So, looking to the South Asia, let me highlight, and Dr. Nitya has also quietly highlighted that the South Asian region is quite vulnerable because of its different terrains, because it has mountains and it has seas and all the way in between. And so, in terms of vulnerability, is very high. What we have seen in this last, I would say this year, a lot of flooding, whether it's triggered due to climate change or some other issues, but there was a lot of flooding, and many people have been displaced, let's say, in Nepal, India, and Bangladesh. And this will go up as the temperature will increase. I think we will see much more future vulnerabilities in this particular region. And if you look, and if you read what the IPCC, that came in 2014, talks about the South Asia and Southeast Asia will be the highest vulnerable region from the sea level rise and the coastal flooding. And there will be a lot of migration within the boundaries or within the national territory and beyond the national territory. So these are some of the issues that is coming up. And we are already seeing at the ground level. So mitigation is one part, definitely we all need to address on, but there is also an adaptation component part we really need to look when we look at this particular region. And on top of that, what we say is currently, if you look at the global average temperature rise, we are already at 1.1 degree temperature rise above pre-industrial state. And if you project, or I would say the UNFCCC has already done the projection with the target that has been put forward by all the countries in their intended nationally determined contribution, or INDCs. Now we say NDCs, we are heading to 2.7 degree plus 1. If the current emission is not gone down. So in that particular context, we are already at 1.1 and we are heading to less than 2.7 or 3 degree plus 1. The impact will be really devastating. And most of the countries in this South Asian region has a coastal region as well as high elevation. So, and one fourth of the world population are in this part. So there is a big vulnerability issue. There may be much more, what I would say, catastrophic impact that may see due to the climate change, or the climate change may trigger much more catastrophic impact in this particular region. So we need to look beyond those aspects as well when we talk about the climate change issue in this context. Now, coming back to the global arena or my area of focus, if you look the Paris Agreement, when the Paris Agreement Article 2.1 really talks about the global temperature target. It talks about stabilizing the global temperature target well below 2 degree and heading towards 1.5. So I think that's the benchmark. The beauty of the Paris Agreement is that it doesn't have an index, it has a temperature target, and we all are heading towards how we are contributing to meet the temperature target, because temperature target is key not only for the mitigation but also how people and the ecosystem and everybody adapt with the climate change impact. So I think that's the key. So the temperature target is really key on that front. And if you look, or I would say one of the next beauty of the Paris Agreement is that it asks all the parties or all the countries to have a bottom-up approach to submit their contribution or nationally determined contribution. And many countries, including the countries from the South Asia, has put forward their INDCs, which are like a low-hanging fruit, or those can be easily achievable. So those are the targets that Dr. Nitya has presented over. I see them as a low-hanging fruit for each country to meet the target. And we need to somehow review this target before we will lock in into the low ambition. Because all these targets are set for the 2030. So if we stick with this target, then we are heading to 2.7 plus 1. Definitely we will not be the victim, because I see we as a little bit privileged compared to many other people in this particular region. So they will face much more higher impact compared to us. But as a solidarity issue, as a global citizen, I think we need to somehow address into this aspect. So how the international treaty is taking into it, I will go to that particular thing. The COP23, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the 23rd conference of the party took place 10 days ago in Bonn, and then Fiji was co-presidency. And there were three different issues where I see that perfectly linked with this one, and how we can ramp up the mitigation ambition. In particularly, is the first one, what we say is a Talanawa dialogue. And Talanawa dialogue is a Fijian proper way they want to have a dialogue on different, on the mutual trust and building a trust among the different stakeholders and different parties. The Talanawa word came very recently this year only, because in the Paris COP decision, I'm not talking about agreement, in the COP decision, they talk about having a facilitative dialogue in 2018. And so they turned the word facilitative dialogue to Talanawa dialogue, basically saying that it talks about three different issues. It tried to review, it asks countries, the first, where we are right now. The second, where do you want to go? And third is, how do we get there? So these are three different questions that will be launching in this Talanawa dialogue from January 2018 onwards. And it will be a year-long, one whole year-long dialogue, different regional at the national level stakeholder which happens, and all the parties will convene at the COP24 in Poland, and where they will be a kind of a political pressure in terms of how to revisit the low ambition of the INDCs or the NDCs that the all country has put forward. So far, I think it's only Argentina who has somehow a little bit flexible to review their INDCs or the NDCs. None of the other countries have really came forward to do so. So, but there is a window of opportunity to review the countries' NDCs before it gets implementation into force from 1st of January 2021. And so this 1 year, I think the whole process will go on, and that will definitely help to raise the much more mitigation emission bar, the first thing. The second thing I want to talk about is the global stock take. The global stock take will take place in year 2023, where they will do the stock taking of how the NDCs are being implemented and what needs to be done in the second phase of the NDCs that the all countries need to provide by year 2025. If you look at the Paris Agreement talks about the NDCs or the countries' contribution needs to be put in place 5 years before it gets action. So for the Paris Agreement, which starts from 1st of January year 2021, all the countries put forward their NDCs in 2015. So similarly, for the next cycle of the NDCs, it will be year in 2023. So how the NDCs or how the countries' target will put forward during the global stock take is also key, because there should not be any backsliding from the current ambitions is also really key. So that's also a critical component for us, or the critical year that we need to look during the global stock take period in year 2023. And the last thing, the last debate that was very highlighted during this part was the pre-2030 action, and I think the credit goes to like-minded developing countries, and this is we say in the negotiation process, and it was basically this time was quite vocal. India was quite vocal on that part, because they want to see, based on the historical responsibility of the developed country, they are not doing much mitigation action. So, and most of the burden are going to the developing country when the Paris Agreement kicks into force. So there is also a space how the mitigation ambition can be ramped up before the Paris Agreement entry into force. Or I would say how the second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol will be fully implemented and much more enhanced before the Paris Agreement kicks into year 2021. So there is three critical, component that was discussed 10 days ago or so, and the design of the Taranamadago was really a big negotiation, and that was finalized only on the last day of the COP. The Taranama dialogue, which starts from 1st of January 2028, its main intention is to how to raise the mitigation ambition before the Paris Agreement kicks into force. Otherwise, we will lock in with a low mitigation target until 2030. So that's one thing. The second, the global stock take, which takes the year 2023, how the mitigation target can be ramped up much more higher than the existing one for the next cycle. And thirdly, what are the various measures that we can do during the pre-2020 phase or before the Paris Agreement entry into force to increase the mitigation target, especially by the developed country, and how the developed country can contribute to the developing countries, especially with the finance, with the technology, and with the capacity building support to raise the mitigation target. So let me close over there by saying there is also international pressure coming up. Whatever the countries has put forward in their INDCs is very low-hanging fruit. There will be much more international pressure coming from the UNFCCC as well as and other things. And I see that all of us, we need to really look into this aspect. Otherwise, we will lock into the high temperature target, and which is very bad, not only for the survival of the vulnerable peoples and others, but also for our own well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rai. Thank you for this helpful inputs about how regional countries can realize and enhance their climate commitment under the Paris Agreement. So we have around 10 minutes before break. So I'd like to take some questions from audience. So if I may. Chris?
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Acharya, and it's quite a basic question, and please excuse my ignorance. So in the South Asian context, and when we talk about funding, right, is there actually a shortage of funding, or are there shortage, or is there a shortage of good projects for people to actually invest in?
I think we would like her to.
My question is sort of slightly more like a comment, but one of the things that India is putting forward in an aggressive way, at least in our discussions with government of India, before they go for any negotiation, is lifestyle emissions, right? And their entire premise is that India scores very high when it comes to low levels of lifestyle emissions, and how those need to be imbibed by Western developed countries, because ultimately it's that lifestyle change that will actually bring down their level of emission, and that can also sort of help them commit to higher levels of reduction. And in fact, recently we had this debate going on in India about air conditioner settings, right? And sitting here in this room and having gone through grad school in Singapore, I always feel that I sit in a class in a tropical environment where the outside temperature is in the mid-30s or in the late 20s, and the classroom is freezing at 18. So recently, for example, the government of India has tried to mandate manufacturers of air conditioners to have the default setting when an air conditioner gets switched on to about 22 or 24. Right? So this is I'm just giving an example of what government of India is sort of trying to pitch as lifestyle emissions. But underlying issue is that what they're calling lifestyle emissions is basically what they're seeing as an aggregate impact of low level of energy consumption by the population as a whole. The fact is that disparity still exists, that there are a few rich people who are consuming a lot, and a few people who are consuming very little, and net off it looks like India is living sustainably. but unfortunately it's about two groups of people living in respect and life. But I think there is still a lesson for the rest of the world, the globe to sort of take that there is perhaps an opportunity for us to cut back on consumption. Right? And I think the final thing is that Singapore prides itself on teaching the rest of the world how it's done, because we movement on a small scale. But when it comes to energy, I've always found that Singapore is like, oh, but we're an island state, we're constrained by the fact that we don't have solar or wind or any potential because we're just small. But perhaps this is the time for Singapore to say, but being an island state, let me try and see how I can implement what I can best, small level, and I can show best to the world all this time. So this is sort of a comment based on the point that.
So, Nitya Nanda, could you answer the first question?
Thank you. This is actually a very good question, and also not easy to respond. But having said that, if you look at the total investment needs in South Asia, it's quite huge. I don't have the numbers exactly, but it's a huge and $1 trillion investment. So if you look at from that point of view, there is not enough money available to invest in all this infrastructure, all of their needs. But having said that, on one hand, we have not enough funds, but on the other hand, the funds that we have are not being utilized, not being used properly. So that's where the dilemma is. The third dilemma is that even though the money has been already provided, but there is a very slow progress in the implementation of those projects. That's very much linked with the capacity of these countries to absorb that money. So that's why I think on one hand the investment needs are huge, so available resources are not enough, but on the other hand money that we have are not being used, and then there is a very little absorption capacity. So in order to address all of these things, so I think finding a very, very good projects is very, very important. So when you look at the demand, we just say that, oh, there is something that we have to do it and we need this much amount of money. But the real thinking behind in developing a project, that's never there, or it's not, you don't find it that much. So that's why finding a credible, I would like to emphasize credibility, credible pipeline of projects is very, very difficult to find. And once there's a good project, once the good project is there, money will find its way out there. So money is never a problem, was never a problem, is not a problem, will never be a problem, provided that we have good projects to work on and then we have capacity to do it. But having said that, sometimes accessing those funds is also a challenge. If you look at it from the country's perspective, maybe the money is there at the ADB, World Bank, or some other GCF and other places, but accessing that one is also not easy with this requirement, this timeline, that timeline, and so on. Sometimes it also makes it very, very difficult from the other side as well. But on the other hand, we have to make sure that the money that we have is used properly, and there is enough of the safeguards, procurement, all those things are in place, so that the money that we have is used properly. So we cannot also ignore on that part, especially the governance side and as a process as well. So putting it all together in a perspective makes it a little bit difficult, but I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you. So any questions from the audience? So otherwise, I have one general question. So we mentioned a lot, technological change and leapfrogging opportunities in these emerging countries, and also we are like climate finance. So how can we connect climate finance to technology programs? So do we have some innovative financing scheme considering technology deployment speed and financial needs at different technology research and deployment stages?
Again, a good question. So let me just give some kind of a perspective from ADB. Let's say if this climate finance, climate issues are not there. We were there as a bank. So we as a development bank creating one, supporting construction of a road or any power plant or constructing schools or any other infrastructure. social aspects and so on. We have been doing that business in the past, and even though we are doing it right now. But because of these climate considerations, the way we think, the way we prioritize projects, the way we able to mobilize additional financing, even more concessional financing from other sources, it has gone up. So that's why we are also under pressure to do more in this direction. And then even our donors, there are more donors, the existing donors are giving us more money in that direction. And then when we go out and then mobilize financing for this kind of causes, we are able to mobilize more money in that space. And then on the other hand, when we receive a request from these countries in this space, is also more now than before. So I think that's why this kind of a discussion, this kind of awareness, this kind of whether it's climate change convention or any other effort in that direction, always help us to move into the right direction, all all together in that direction. So that's why, for instance, we have facilities within ADB. As I mentioned, like this high-level technology fund. This is specifically to address climate change. Generally, very good country, they will not. Why would they borrow money to go for a more advanced technology? Right? They can just make use of existing technology. They are happy, and then from our side, we'll be happy to support that one as well. But because of this kind of high-level technology fund or other climate financing available, so then we can go and support them with this advanced technology. So these kind of efforts are helpful. Sometimes we have more grant money right now to assist these countries to address some of these issues. Maybe they build their capacities and so on. So then we'll be able to help more. So the technological schemes, initiative, there are also some risk sharing mechanisms are also available. So new technologies are also more money for the capacity building and project development facility as well. So in a way, what I see is that from that point of view, the global the response to support these countries towards advanced technologies, towards more cleaner, low carbon path and so on, is much better than what used to be before. But again, what we have right now may not be enough and sufficient. We need to continue to do more, but certainly much better than before.
Okay, thank you. So let's have a short break, and please come back at 4 p.m. So in 15 minutes.
And just a second, Dr. Yang, can I please ask you to present tokens of our appreciation to the guest speakers on this session?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So please join us for thanking all our speakers in this session.